All right, welcome back to Resilient Voices and Beyond. And I know before y'all get to going, it's been a minute. It's been a good minute. Only thing I can say is life and life. It happens to us all, and I just had to take a little time, get it together, build up a lineup of people, and we here. But we gonna keep it pushing because I told y'all we gonna get 50 episodes within this season three. Now we got 30. Today will make 31. So we making some progress. So don't be on my necks too much. But anyways, if this is your first time happening to stumble across this podcast, and you don't know what it is, why we here. This is the Resilient Voices and Beyond podcast. My goal here is to uplift the voices of those who were once silenced or who just didn't have the opportunity or the platform to share their testimony or their story of resilience. My goal is to be able to show the many different facets and faces of those out there in society so that we may be able to create change in our communities, in our nation, and our state, and more so. With that being said, my name is Michael D. Davis Thomas, aka MDDT Speaks. I spent approximately 11 years in the Michigan child welfare system, half of that on the juvenile side, second half of that on the foster care side. Aged out, started working in this child welfare arena and system change work, done everything from juvenile corrections to working alongside social workers and caseworkers and policymakers and more. So I've been around. That's why I'm here. I ain't just talking out the side of my neck. I got a little bit of experience under my belt. I'm still young, but I feel old, but I'm still young. But I'm here. But y'all ain't here for me. Y'all really not. I just wanted to warm us up a little bit, welcome us back. I want you to, if you need to get your snack, whatever you need, to get comfortable and get deep into it. We're gonna get deep into it. I got an episode for y'all today. So I'm gonna have my guest introduce herself and we're gonna get it going.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for having me on this podcast. My name is Rachel Worthy. I am a recent graduate at Wayne State University with my master's degree in the School of Social Work. I also have a degree in criminal justice and sociology from Wayne State and a certificate in alcohol and substance use studies. I also currently am at a job, Nation Outside, where I'm a trauma informed peer led navigator for justice impacted individuals.
Thank you so much. I just wanted to take a moment to that last name is so powerful. Worthy.
Yes.
Oh, man. And I'm pretty sure you're gonna tell us a little bit about your story. I guess after I ask my first question.
Okay.
So
Yes.
diving into that, you kind of gave us a little glimpse of who you are, what you do, and a little bit of your passions through what you have studied. Um, if you don't mind me asking, if you can dive a little bit deeper, help myself and the audience understand um, what has helped you and what has guided you, and how did you get to where you are? And I know that sounded like three different questions. So let me narrow that down. What has helped you get to where you are today?
Okay, so just some backstory to kind of just display how I got to where I am today. Well, first and foremost, I think God got me here today through just building resiliency and strength through my lived experiences. To make a very long story short, from the time I was born until I was 8 years old, I grew up in foster care or placed with different family members. At the time, my mom was on substances and my dad was in and out of prison. I didn't really have a strong relationship with my dad. Um, but at that time, my mom, she could here and there like take care of us, but when she couldn't, um, we were placed into like group homes or foster care or with family if they could get us. And then when I was 8 years old, she got back custody of me and my three siblings. So I am a middle child. I have an older brother and a younger sister on my mom's side. And then from about to 8 to 16, I would kind of say it was kind of normal. Now, when I think of normal, like reflecting back, it wasn't what kids or pretty much anybody should be experiencing. But for me, it was like kind of like my whole community was experiencing it. We grew up in like subsidized housing in a low income neighborhood in poverty. But it was, and my mom, she was a single mom at the time. So she never like brought back any like men around us or anything, but she was just always at work. So me and my siblings had to pretty much raise ourselves. And my brother early on he was a couple years older than me. So when she got us back, he was already just like off into the streets and partaking in things himself. And my sister, she has special needs, so she struggles with some like mental illness. And but at that time we didn't understand what that looked like. That was just kind of like our norm. That's what people in our neighborhood, like, we were exposed to a lot of different traumatic things, but it was kind of just normal for us. So I was kind of like expected to be the good, like the good kid in our family or my family, or, I kind of latched on to school. I latched on to my friends, just different outlets that kind of brought me away from my reality. And it also came with some like negative expectations because of that. Like, I don't feel like I got the love that I needed as a child, or I really felt like neglected. And so I turned to different outlets to kind of subsidize that feeling, or kind of trying to find my identity in all of like in my family and my community. When I was 16, they talk about like pivotal moments that happen in our life, and that kind of changed the trajectory of like kind of what direction we go. I had found out, or I guess, yeah, found out that my mom was back using substances. So it kind of shattered my idea of like what our family looked like. And like, just, I viewed her as like this very strong woman, and like getting sober for her kids. And um at the time, I going through it, obviously looking back, 2020 vision, I'm like, okay, like she didn't have the tools in her toolbox. But as a 16-year-old girl, I started getting like kind of angry and bitter and like kind of resentful. Like, why would you do this to us? Why would you put us through this again? And um, she never lost custody of us again after that, but I had already made up in my mind that I wanted something different. So I kind of just started, that's what kind of where it sparked like my passion and like trying to help people or wanting to help people. But I ended up meeting a man who was like a couple years older than me, and just said all the right things, was at the right time. I was already going through things at home, and I was so that was about 6 months to a year later. It was like right before my senior year in high school, and me and him started dating. And shortly after, I would say it was like kind of started off controlling, and it basically escalated and progressed into some like domestic violence. And um, we ended up getting married. So I was about 21 years old when we decided to get married. And um, so I'd say from 17 to about 27, I was in an extremely abusive relationship, and also experienced like sexual trauma during this time. And also, like you said at the beginning of the podcast, life was life. And during this time, both my parents passed away, actually. I never took the time to stop because I didn't know how to like grieve, to take care of myself, to process what was going on, because I'm trying to manage a relationship. And in my head, I didn't want this little family I created to fall apart like I thought my family did when I was in high school. So I was so determined to like keep my life and my marriage together. And from a different perspective, I never thought like this is what I deserve to go through. I I understood on a different level that he was traumatized and I was trying to fix him, and I didn't understand that that wasn't my role in the relationship. So toward the end, I did end up in the 8 years getting an associate's degree in social work. Um, and I found out that my brother was expecting a child. So it came down to me just not wanting to lose my life. And I didn't want to continue to miss out on important things that I had already missed out on because I was in this relationship. Like I was very isolated from my family and friends. Like I lost a lot of relationships that thankfully today I have regained. But I just packed a bag, packed my ID, and left. And that's what brought me to Michigan in 2016. I was in a really dark place mentally, and it took me a couple months to try to figure life out. But I just made some poor decisions that ended up with me being just as impacted. So I just made a dumb decision when I first came to Michigan, and it resulted in me having 6 felonies on my record. And it's been about 7 years since this passed, but I spent about 3 weeks in jail, not due to like them sentencing me, but just in the transition period of like my charges and everything. And I really was like, you know what? Like, I kind of got a firsthand experience, which I already had these ideas of how the criminal justice system worked and how it actually doesn't work and how it's like discriminatory and things like that. That I'm like, you know what? Like, I have the opportunity. I have a really great support system in Michigan, like to change and turn my life around. So I did just that. I took a plea deal, which knowing now what I know, I shouldn't have done, but I did. I took a plea deal. I took accountability. I knew the first step to changing was changing myself and my mindset. So I went back to school at Wayne State and got my degree in criminal justice and sociology. I realized the barriers that impacted me once I got that degree was obtaining employment, even with an education, how hard it was because of my record. And then I heard about, well, I knew about the School of Social Work. You know, I didn't really have my eyes or like think that that's where I was supposed to be. Um, but I do think everything happens for a purpose and an alignment. And I ended up applying and got accepted. And just throughout the last 2 years, I would say I really just started connecting my lived experiences to my purpose now and just being more involved. Like I was during my time at Wayne State in the Holistic Defense Program, which bridges the gap between social work and law and criminal justice. And I really feel like just full circle moment, the job that I'm at now really uses my lived experiences and values that and really gives me a purpose in like making change and yeah. I know I
Man,
stopped abruptly.
first and foremost, I just want to take a moment to thank you for your vulnerability and sharing,
Yeah.
and being open straight out the gate. I appreciate it. Um, I want to make sure got these age ranges because I got me some notes.
Yeah, I know I said a
Y'all
lot.
can't see my notes, but I got some notes. We about to dive into this. So we about to talk about it. But what was the age range of your experience in foster care again?
It was probably from the time I was born to about 8 years old. I was in second grade when my mom got back custody of us, me and my two siblings.
So I okay. So if you don't mind in that space, because I want to break this down how you broke it down to me.
Yeah.
What was the thoughts if you can remember or reflect back in that time. I imagine at some point you had visitation with your mom, or your mom was some way, form, fashion reintegrated back into your life. What was that like? I know you mentioned spending time with other family members when that was possible, but to the best of your ability, can you share a little bit what was the thought process as you developed, as you grew, and and this is me pulling at straws. I don't know unless you correct me if I'm wrong. Home wasn't home.
Yeah, so during that time, I don't feel like I had a stable home. Home was where I was at. Like I kind of see it now too with kind of how I live my life when they say it takes a village,
Mm-hmm.
is that I see multiple people contributing because I don't remember even being with different family members or the couple foster care families that I was with or the group home I was in. I don't remember, and it could be I have seen myself disassociating from certain events in my life, just being where I'm at now and so reflective, is that I I don't I didn't feel like too much negative was going on. That was just kind of the norm for me. Like, okay, well, I'm at my grandma's this week, or I'm at my aunt's this week. And when I was there, I do feel loved, and I do feel that my mom did not want to lose that. Like just how I take it now as an adult is that she never wanted to lose full or like lose that custody of us because she always was trying to get sober and understanding how like substance use works now and having your own interactions in the criminal justice system and still trying to parent and trying to figure out life. For her, she always kind of tried. I think she was trying to keep us with our family, with different family members, so that she wouldn't lose us fully. So, and even the couple foster care families that I remember, I didn't feel too much like a negative experience, should I say. Like, I don't remember being abused to a degree that, I know moving around was traumatic for me in general, but also I felt a sense of like people that cared and that they were collectively working to try to, keep me and my brother for the most part stayed together through all of this. And because of my sister's disability, she needed like special services. But throughout this time, I really felt like it was like kind of a collective movement to try to do the best because like my grandma or other family members, I kind of understood that my mom was struggling with substance use and her having her own trauma from her childhood and trying to navigate that while having children. Um, I just feel like at that time it they were just trying to do the best they could as adults. And although I don't think it is hard because it's kind of two sides to the coin. Is like in one sense, that's sad that we had to go through that as children. We didn't have a choice. We didn't have, a say so in it. But then on the other side is like really that my mom did care. And it's just that she was struggling with things herself. And that's why we were a part of this system.
Thank you for sharing that. Um, I asked that question and you kind of give it to me to just get a better sense, of who your mom was, and that journey and through your eyes. What was your experience? Like how did you feel? What was your thoughts? And um as you share, you get to see in I get to witness, that experience. What you just said kind of brought me to a point with my own mom. My mom, there was efforts, that my mom strived to do, but mental health, stress, anxiety is very real, and you can be the most um, perfectly imperfect, human being, and you can still succumb to, stress, anxiety, and just different and irrational rationalizations due to circumstance, if that makes sense. And by all means, I would never excuse, the abuse, the neglect, because I believe that there is a choice, but I also believe in this experience of experiencing other stories and my own experience with my parents that, I don't think that parents wake up and like I'm going to mess over my children. You know,
Yeah.
I don't think that. I truly in my heart of hearts. I don't know the other word of the saying like the hopeless romantic, but the hopeless
Yeah.
believer. I guess I would say the hopeless believer in me um chooses not to believe that people innately just wake up and like, oh, I'm just going to be destructive. I believe things happen in a different turn of events that it just becomes rational.
Yeah.
Weirdly enough, it seemed weird to us because we haven't been through it. We
Yeah.
the it was a different set of things, and even for us, having been through trauma, it's not a foreign thing. So we have a little bit more toughness, to our skin. But I don't know what that looked like, for my mom. I don't know, and I'm pretty sure, like as you think about it and try to walk in your mom's shoes, you know. So I think what you what you mentioned kind of brought me to that same place of just like, I can give my mom grace and I can
Yes.
give my mom, mercy, and because I understand that, today in a better life
Yes.
that life be life and circumstances can make us do certain things that we will have never imagined ourselves thinking that it's okay to do.
Yes, and even understanding, at least in my generation back then, we didn't talk about mental health. We didn't talk about substance use in a mental health type of way. We didn't, and I really believe in meeting people where they're at. And you have to some give people grace. Like I've needed grace myself as an adult, and I think that what works for me or what I understand or the choices I make may not be the same choices that work for my brother or my mom or my dad. Like, even kind of trying to navigate the relationships that I had with them different and similar is that I need to give my dad some grace too. He wasn't in my life that I remember until I was about 10 years old. Like I knew who he was. But even when he got out of prison and I would come to Michigan because that my dad's family lived in Michigan. I would come in the summers when I was a kid and we didn't know each other and he didn't know how to be a parent. I had an older brother from on his side who was about 10 or 15 years older that he didn't really take care of. And when it came to me, I do feel that he loved me. He didn't know how to, though. Like, he didn't know how to have a relationship with a 10-year-old girl and be my dad. All he knew was like how to protect himself in the streets because that's all he ever had to do was to protect himself. So how do you be a parent to a 10-year-old when he's never done that? And I had to learn that what works for him might not work for everybody or what he needs. But back then when it came to mental health and substance use and other, it was a one size fits all, and that's just not how life is.
Yeah, and we know so many things when it comes to mental health for men. There's so many different conversations around allowing, men, especially those who grow up in these survivalistic, environments, to allow yourself to be vulnerable and soft, like that is needed for a man growing up in order to be able to display that to others. in the future to display that to their kid if they have never had an opportunity or that piece of them have been shoved in the corner. It is extremely hard to be able to give that in spaces of parenting, and just simple relationships, which bring me to my next question. I told you there's gonna be some questions that ain't uh, but as we just navigating this conversation, and I want to get back to these things I wrote down, but my mind works in
Yeah.
ways. You have the what you experience and seen from your mom, and
Yeah.
then you have the absence yet presence of your father. You talked about and I wrote these out in my notes like as transition periods because these are you
Yeah.
transition into different spaces, different thought processes, and 17 to 27, you made a decision in that time. And if you don't mind me asking,
I
um,
don't.
you feel free to be like, nah, you tripping. Uh, how did your experience and what you witnessed from your mom and your experience with your father play a part in your decisions within dating and marriage, and ultimately you made a decision to leave that. So like how did that play a part? And I asked that because so many times we know we're young people and different, even myself, growing up in the system, I told myself I never wanted to be in a relationship like my parents.
Yeah.
I would hear my parents yelling and arguing at a young age. I remember coming home and my dad's stuff is gone. I remember um, finding out through Facebook my dad had a whole nother family, a whole nother life.
Yeah.
Like I remember all. I feel like I play an elephant sometimes. I got great memory. I remember all these things, and my parents got a divorce, but and that's not even talking about the abuse and everything. I'm just talking about the marriage, the union between them, the relationship, and what I witnessed. It affected me as a young man, dating, understanding dating. Nonetheless, I what taught me to be a man was reality TV and
Yeah.
Fresh Prince, like the dads on TV, and I did my best to try to replicate those at my young ages. So I guess, I'm asking you like in that transition, in that space, that 17 to 27, um, if you could share a little bit about your thoughts for the young women, young men out there, that may have had some similar experiences.
So I would say definitely the relationship or lack of with my parents definitely impacted and influenced my decision in in my dating life even at that time. And one thing like that I think I lacked was healthy love. Like I was never taught how to like love myself. Like I was in my family to keep the peace because again, I was kind of expected because I just was the good child or should I say make good decisions to maintain that. And so I didn't get attention. Like most of my mother's attention was on my brother or sister because that's where it needed to be. And I kind of just took care of myself. I never had a demonstration of what a healthy relationship looked like between a couple or what a healthy relationship looked like between a man and a woman. So when I finally got into a serious long-term relationship at 17, I was just winging it. And like to be quite honest, I didn't know what I was doing. What I knew in those moments when I made that decision was I thought my life was so bad at home. So what could be worse? Not understanding developmentally at 17 I didn't understand what life was. And I thought I did. I thought I knew everything at 17. And I was never like, I didn't see my mom love herself. What I seen her do was go to work every day to make sure that she could keep a roof over her head. What I seen every day was my brother going in and out of the house and just getting into things. And kind of, I leaned on my brother for that male protection. And when he fell short of what I expected, it's as a brother to be a protector, I just kept feeling like I need my own identity. And so when I got in a relationship, that was my identity. That was like, yes, this is it. And I didn't know what to expect. So I kind of went in blind, just trusting that this man had good intentions for me, that we were going to be fine. This is not going to be a repeat. I'm going to be the one to break the cycle. And I just kept going with it. I obviously, the love was there. Like, I understood kind of what trauma was at that time. And I felt that's what he was going through. So this was a phase. I thought like the violence was a phase. Oh, he'll get over it. He'll once he heals that. But again, like, we didn't talk about the importance of healing. And like back in that, especially in my neighborhood, like, you just kind of kept going. Like, you experience things you don't process. And that's how I live my life, is like, I'm just going to keep going. Like, being resilient and strong was very favored. And like, yeah, like, at least you're strong, though you might have experienced this messed up trauma, but you're strong and you're resilient. Like, we never were able to just be ourselves and be soft and be like, let our emotions out. And so I just kind of, it definitely just impacted my decision of wanting to keep my family that I was creating together. Like, oh no, I'm not gonna, I don't care what anybody says. Like, I'm not gonna, even people in my community or that knew me in high school were like, wow, you put up with that? Like, Rachel would never let somebody do that to her. But they didn't, like, unless you've experienced the cycle of domestic violence, is very complex. And it's not just that easy to say, like, I'm going to leave. Or especially when you have time invested, emotions invested, you've built something. Like, from 17 to 27, I spent pretty much the entirety of my beginning of my adulthood in this relationship, because I didn't want my home to be broken like my home, like my mom's, like my dad's, like my grandparents. And I thought by staying married and taking an oath and under God that I was going to do this at all costs. And yeah, we have trauma, or we got crazy stuff going on behind closed doors, but in front of everybody else, they knew. I knew they knew, but I still try to act like, oh no, like, we're good, we're good. And you can't hide that. Like, even looking back, like, I was depressed. I was anxious all the time. I was trying to thinking I could, like, oh, I could predict when he's going to be angry. And because I never had this demonstrated for me of what healthy love and relationships look like, I thought I was creating that. And I was wrong, because I didn't know, I didn't love myself first, because I was never taught how to love myself. And it's something I had to really rewire and relearn in my brain as an adult. Like, I don't deserve this, and this is not okay. And even though he experienced trauma, it's still not okay. And it doesn't justify someone else harming someone else. Like, the saying goes, hurt people, but someone has to break that cycle, and someone has to stop that, because it doesn't justify and make it okay because we have experienced trauma ourselves. To like, me and him were in a trauma bond basically. And I definitely think my upbringing and lack of healthy relationships influenced my decision to try to create that for myself.
Wow. You mentioned earlier there was a time where you thought that you could help him change, help him grow, or build him up. And I know that is, like it's not just a woman's thing. It's a guy. Some guys out here believe that they can get,
Yeah.
and into these relationships and build this person up. So if you like, can you share a little bit about that? About like why did you believe that, and what ultimately helped you, understand that there was work he had to do on his own.
Well, I would say again, like the abuse didn't start on day one. It's something that kind of progressed. So when it did eventually start progressing, I was already emotionally kind of tied into this relationship. And I didn't see some of those red flags at the beginning. So when they did start to form, I did feel a duty as being his partner. And also now that I'm out kind of getting my own place and adulting and not wanting to go back to my mom's house. And like I felt I was already in deep to where like, okay, like I'm invested, I'm here. And just knowing about some of the trauma or experiences that he had, I was thinking like, okay, well, it just kind of how I grew up, I had this kind of sense like of understanding for people and just had empathy and felt like, okay, well, it he went through something, and because if I just keep showing up as who I am and staying committed and doing the right thing, he'll get over it. It's a phase. And I just kept telling myself this, like, okay, we're gonna just stay on the grind, keep building, and then it just the abuse started progressing. Now I couldn't tell. Like, I was literally like just walking on eggshells trying to predict, like, oh, is he mad today? Or is this gonna happen? And it really put me in a place of like, I was trying to get out of like survival mode from like my teenage years of like, okay, like I'm just going through life. And I didn't expect that in a relationship as an adult. And when it started happening again, like I was already just in a space where I'm like, okay, like I want to help him now so that we could have a better life together, not just for him, but for me. But what I learned throughout that time is like, I still like had some friends and I had some support, and just developmentally, I was getting older, and I'm like, first off, I can't help him if I'm also in a bad space. So I'm pouring from an empty cup. Like I'm trying to pour into him and I have nothing to pour because I'm empty. And so I really had to really stop and say, like, this is not going to work. Even if you can change, I can't be the one to do that. Like we're partners here. I was not any kind of professional at the time. And that also shouldn't solely be my role. At some point, as adults, we have to be accountable and we have to want to change, or we have to want to get help, or we have to access those resources. And I can't do that when I'm also when I'm being drained. And it just came to a point where after a while, emotionally, I was checked out. I had to think about my physical well-being, and I, kind of to be blunt, I can't help anybody if I'm dead. Like I can't help him, I can't help my family, which I wasn't talking to at the time. And when I found out my brother was having a baby, I was like, no, like I don't, if I'm going to in my mind break these cycles, I have to do it through modeling that type of behavior and not just saying like, okay, I'm going to keep being this strong person. Like being strong is leaving, not staying. And I had to really do that.
Definitely, definitely, man. You mentioned earlier about being in the survival phase and being resilient, and people like, oh yeah, at least you're strong.
Yeah.
It's this, probably gonna butcher this, but it's saying that I say like, I'm not resilient out of just, oh, It's the thing, I'm resilient because it's what I had to, you
Yeah.
know. And now it's a more positive as I have done the healing. But I was resilient because it was a necessary tool to get through my day to day.
Yes.
A lot of people in our community, former fosters and those in foster care and adoptees, don't like the word resilient. Some people don't because they have that connotation, but like for me, like, it went from being one word to another,
Yeah.
because of what I decided to do within myself. And with that being said, I want to take a step back. We navigate. You following me?
Yes.
Okay. So going backwards a little bit, 8 to 16.
Yeah.
The notes I took is being reunited with your mom,
Yep.
relapse
Yep.
and disappointment.
Yes.
And you also talked about it, and I don't know if disappointment totally encapsulate those feelings when you found out, your mom relapsed. And I understand as you grew, as you talked about from being born to 8, like the memory is a little bit vague, but when you showed at the 8, you know, um, you kind of got a little bit of a recollection as you grew up with your mom and those experiences and stuff like that. And I can only imagine, someone had an understanding of this is why you were not there. And
Yeah.
and mom relapsed, you
Yeah.
that's when things set in. So you mind sharing a little bit about that? Um, yeah.
Yeah, my mom was very like open about her experiences. Now, we didn't ask or maybe how my brother took it or my perspective is different, but like when I was 8 and you used the word reunited, I looked at that like very positively. And again, what did I see in my mom? A strong, resilient woman. And that's ended up what I was. And I was like, okay, she's trying to keep us all together. And I kind of put her on this pedestal of like, okay, like at 9, 10, 11, when I'm starting to understand, she had some trauma. She was using substances. She tried to keep us together. I really admired that about her. And I'm like, okay, like we're still, exposed because growing up in poverty, we were exposed to trauma in the neighborhood. But when I come home and my mom got a roof over our head and, we got a little bit of food and I was like, okay, like, she was very much involved in like AA and, she would put me in Awana and I would go to the church and teen night. And it's something that kept me grounded. Like, even, my family, like they were like my great aunts and my grandma, like very much in the church. And, my mom wanted us to be in those activities. I participated, my brother not so much. And I do think that kind of gave us a different perspective on life. And um, I just seen her being the strong woman. So when she relapsed and I have her on this pedestal and now she fell off of it, I'm like, wait, what? Like, this isn't supposed to happen to us. And this is not, like, I don't, I just had this like kind of fairy tale of like, okay, yeah, we live in poverty and, we're poor and we're exposed to things, but we're going to be all right. Like we're going to make it through this as a family. And, you go to work and you make sure, yeah, we were neglected emotionally because she wasn't there all the time. But when she was, if we needed something, felt like she tried to make up for her um she tried to basically compensate in other ways for her lack of being there in our early years. And that's not what we needed as kids, but that's how she knew how to love us. And to me, I had this like perfect like person in my brain. So when it wasn't that, I was very disappointed. I was like really hurt. And I was at an age at 16, just as a teenage girl, where I'm like having these feelings of resentment and bitterness. Like, why would you do this to us? Because I didn't understand that she was trying to navigate life. And I'm just like, you've made it this far. Why now? As such a impression, like my brother was 18, my sister, I knew me and my brother was going to be all right. I worried about my sister more because of some of her disabilities. But I'm like, okay, but if I can make it, my sister is going to be good. Like my brother got his issues, but one of us gotta make it out so we could look out for each other. And I thought that was what I was doing, by like leaving, getting a job. I had a job at 16 years old because that's what my mom did, right? She worked. That's all I knew. And it was something that I did kind of an autopilot throughout my life. It's like work, go to the next thing, go to the next thing. And that was detrimental for her. And I don't want to repeat that cycle. So that's why another reason I chose to leave this relationship is like, no, I have to like do something different. If you always do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. So somebody has to really be the one. And so it can be good and bad because still sometimes feeling that kind of survivor's guilt or feeling that burden still, because my family still, their life still be life in. And, I'm just here trying to be a support system for them and, put myself in a position to have those resources, but I have to take care of myself to do that. And I have to like just heal. I have to, take care of my mental health to be able to, really break that cycle for like my nieces and nephews. And so, yeah, I kind of went off a little bit.
No, she said you gotta wait on.
Kind
No,
of went to
I
six, but
look, I truly appreciate it. Life is funny. I had a question for you, but before I ask this question, I want to give you background why this question came to mind. Um, I love my family.
yeah,
Um, I mean, it kind of it was part of me, enduring my family. Um, took me out of love with them.
yeah,
My first heartbreak with a woman I shared this before on here was my mom.
yeah,
And I feel like, what a lot of us, when we look at things and we are in that process of healing, we try to figure out the notches that
yeah.
made us, especially those who, you know, we almost ain't make it. we almost ain't make it coming out that back again.
Still trying to make it.
Yeah, and we as we get to that place of quietness and we are sitting with thoughts and we ask ourselves those inquisitive, deep questions that get us to a place of critical thinking, and we are like, how did I get here?
Yeah,
You know, I got to that place and the realization that got, because I was an angry kid.
yeah,
I was in placement, I connected very well with the female staff, but I also didn't want nothing to do with them at the same time. And when you get older, I'm trained through being a part of the child welfare system to analyze different behaviors and be like, huh, that's why I was doing that. But my mom broke my heart at a very young age. And I remember I remember what did it. I don't remember the specific day, but my mom used to always say, I wish you were aborted. I wish I never had you, especially in those spots of anger. But before I just say that, one of the things I realized when I was analyzing my mom's, pathology of life, her path, um, is that my mom, when she got to the place where my dad left, it set off something in her. And I resembled a lot of my father. And she couldn't see me. She saw him,
Yeah.
you know, and a lot of the anger, the frustration, the resentment, the hatred, um, in that moment, because I don't believe my mom hated my dad for always. I just think, that anger, um, that I was the beating post, and I remember that it's just one day she said that, and I just disconnected. Cause I think my mom, it was just the last thing. Cause your mom loves you, nurtures you. Like that's the first love you ever feel from you being a small pea in her belly. That's your deepest connection. So like, it really didn't matter what my brothers, my sisters, other family members, and so forth. But when my mom said that one last time, I disconnected emotionally from
Yeah.
and the feeling of love.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was disconnected for years. So I often ask, that question, probably not often enough with people I interview, but um, did your mom break your heart, and how have you navigated um healing from that um to be the woman you envision yourself to be?
So I think she did. And I think that, again, I didn't know what love looked like. I felt it in different ways from people. And when like people said, I love you, I'm like, okay, I love you. That's just something you say. I felt it more through action with people, and that's why I can say that she loved me because I seen the effort and things. And then also when I felt that letdown, I also associated that with like, oh, well, you must not love me, or this isn't what I thought love looked like. So to me, what I learned love to be wasn't what the like word love, how people may perceive it. So I would say too, like, I was emotionally not attached to a lot of things in life because at any time I knew, even from like being a kid, we moved around a lot, or I always had to be prepared for something to change. So I never wanted to get too comfortable. And uh, I would say I still do that, kind of emotionally detach myself from things as a protective factor for me. It's something that I do. So, because I don't want to allow other people to have that much control over me, because when I have, it didn't end up being a good experience. So I would say she did. When you put expectations on people and they don't meet them, it always feels like heartbreaking. Like,
Tells you to do one thing.
yeah, serious. And you kind of, everyone has their own like coping mechanisms, and for me that was really detaching. Like, I don't get too much in my feelings now because I don't allow that part of me, and it's something I'm continuously trying to work on because I don't want people I interact with. Like, it's really sometimes easier for me to interact with strangers than it is with people I love because I hold them to a different standard. And that's oftentimes because of proximity, because of feelings, because of other things, that those are the people, like you said, like, we're the easy targets. So when my mom did take her trauma out on me, or my brother, it wasn't me personally. And I had to learn to not take things personal because we were just there and accessible, and she didn't know how else to do that. I learned that through, like, I had to really learn, like, not take, when I was experiencing domestic violence, is like, this is not my fault. I don't deserve this. I'm just the closest person. Whether he wants to justify and say I made him angry, it's my fault, I shouldn't have did this, that wasn't on me. And I'm not going to take responsibility for other people's actions. And their feelings. And, I understand that they didn't have the outlets to process or heal, but it's definitely a heartbreaking feeling when you have this thought of a relationship, or like with my mom, or like I said, like my brother was very protective of me. And when he went out and made mistakes that impacted our relationship, I was heartbroken. Like, why would he do this to himself? And it kind of made my perspective change. And I'm like, if I don't get emotionally attached to this, it can't affect me. And that wasn't healthy either. Again, I really believe in meeting people where they are. And even with my brother to this day, I have to meet him where he's at. Like, I can't put these expectations on him, and I have to understand his needs are different than mine, and what works for me might not work for him. And so that's how I kind of navigate that now in the space I'm in, and through growing and healing and processing, is like just to meet people where they are, give them grace, understand like it's so hard to break cycles of addiction, cycles of domestic violence, cycles of trauma in general. And everybody moves at their own pace, and they need have different needs. And that's kind of how I navigate that now. And yeah.
Appreciate you sharing that. I only got a couple more questions.
Okay.
Got questions, but just restating, just appreciate your openness and your vulnerability. Um, man.
Get on the charger. That's
So I kind of like wrote, like I said, I wrote these down like different timelines and different things, and you touched on, I call it the leave. When you leave,
oh, sorry. That's the dog.
and then you mentioned, being justice impacted.
Yeah.
Um, so I want to talk about those two spaces, you know, um, diving a little bit deeper, if you don't mind. Um, when you left, and what did that look like for you? You know, what supports were there? If any. I know you mentioned you had to, reconnect with family, friends and different, people that were a part of your life before. So just wanted to touch on those different spaces and, what led to the decisions, to being justice impacted and um, ultimately, you know, in that space, what helped you come back to the look, it's about to get you. What helped you come back to the space of knowing that you were worthy of more? Um, Going after, your certifications and your degree, and just taking that initiative to believe in yourself, despite.
So I would say when I left, one thing I can say throughout my life, at least I would even say while I was in foster care, is I knew that there were people around me who cared about me. And I really believe in like the power of like mentorship. And um, I was in this program in high school. One of my teachers, she was very supportive of me, and she kind of knew about some things I was going through at home, and even still connected with me. I mean, to this day, she wrote my letter, my reference letter to get into grad school, and just the importance of like support and connections. And sorry, just that importance of like just having a healthy support system is what I knew I had that, right? Like when I was in this abusive relationship, I had friends and family who supported me, who wanted me to leave, and I disconnected from them. I won out of protection for them and for myself, but also, I was forced to, and I couldn't have that expectation that people deal with the same things that I'm dealing with, or that they have to put up with certain things just because they were my friend. Like, I had that false expectation, and um but I knew that they were there, and I knew they wanted what was best for me. I mean, some of my strongest, I have a friend, my best friend from second grade, like she's always stayed like around to support me. And I knew, like, we disconnected during my time in this abusive relationship, and I knew that she would still be my friend if I wasn't in this, but she had to protect herself. I had, and I didn't want to involve people because of my fears and because of the different things. And I would say that's what, when I left, I knew they were still there. Um, and so I would say that that was a big part of me leaving, and knowing that I had support out there. When I did first leave, again, I was just in a bad space mentally, and it caused me to make a poor decision. Like when I moved to Michigan, and I just made a choice that ultimately led me to being just as impacted. I didn't think that that was going to happen, but it did, and I do believe that um sometimes that we go through things with purpose, and I chose to turn that moment into something that had purpose, and um use that in what I'm doing now. And I would say really just having this strong support system, and just knowing that just throughout my life, and having God, of course, like I always felt like I had an extra layer of protection when I look back at some of the things I've experienced, and that there was just purpose in all of these things.
For sharing that. I appreciate it. And it definitely gave me a little bit more insight into your journey and what made you who you are today.
Yeah.
So, as we come to the as we come to the end, I feel like we navigated and through it all, through it all. Um, you recently graduated. You
Yeah.
know, you are doing great work. Um, what is that? Just give me a little bit of insight of what that looks like and what you envision for the space that you are in. And also feel free to elaborate if, what mental health look like for you now. Um, and the space that you are in.
So now I'm a big advocate for therapy. Although I will say I didn't practice self-care until the last like year or two. Not because I didn't want to, but I always just kind of just kept going, kept going. Like I didn't realize I wasn't even practicing self-care. I just kept going. And because I was doing okay, I was like, I don't need it. I don't need therapy. I don't, but just to be able to process, and now self-care for me looks like going on walks. I go to the track, and I read, I listen to music. It can look different for everyone, and there's no right or wrong. It's just you have to find self-care that works for you. And going through education has been a form of self-care for me, and just furthering my education. And you have to find that balance, because it can be self-care, but it also can be stressful. It also, like, having an obligation and having priorities. It's like you have to be able to fill your cup back up, to show up in spaces and be effective and make change. And so I'm a big advocate for prioritizing your mental health, practicing self-care, learning to actually get to know who you are and know what self-care looks like for you so that you can come into spaces and show up and be effective and be your authentic self. So yes, I'm big on self-care, and that just looks different depending on what I'm going through at the time, but it's definitely something that I have been doing the last year or two, and just prioritizing that now that I have time. I would say in the work that I'm doing now, having that passion and it, keeps me going. And yeah.
So before I get into, my last question to you, as we've shared and as we've talked, and I'm pretty sure you had several conversations before today with yourself. Is Rachel worthy of love today? Healthy love.
Yes, I am. And everybody is.
I feel that. I feel that. You see, I'm gonna tie that in there. I'm tired.
Yes.
um. Okay. Okay. What advice would you like to leave here today for those out there listening? Feel free to make it for a specific genre, space, audience, or for everybody.
Um, well, one, since we spoke about grace so much, this is for anybody listening. I think it's very important to give yourself grace, give others grace. It allows you to come from a place of just understanding that we're all different. All of our lived experiences matter. Is everybody's valuable. Everybody deserves self-love, love from other people, even people who are unlovable at times. Like they deserve that love, and it's just probably something they haven't experienced, and that causes them to behave in certain ways. So I really think if I can, like when you have a chance to be kind to somebody, just do it. When you have an opportunity to give grace to somebody, just do it. Like it doesn't cost us anything, and it really can impact somebody's life for the rest of their life. Like they're going to remember how you made them feel. But take care of yourself, and no matter what kind of work you're in, no matter where you're at in life, because you cannot pour from an empty cup, so find what works for you. So that would just kind of be some of my key things that I want to leave, is that all of our lived experiences matter, and just to find purpose in them.
Definitely. You definitely just dropped some gems there. I really appreciate that. My last space here is any last comments. And this is the space if you got a song, a rap album, whichever, you got some bars you want to leave, a book, business. People can a way that people can support you and connect with you. Feel free to share.
So I am fresh in my social work career. So if anybody with the work I do now, I work at a nonprofit organization for justice impacted individuals, communities, and families. So if anybody listening is justice impacted themselves or have family, I believe we're all justice impacted in a way to an extent. Just my personal opinion. But if anybody needs any resources, I work for an organization called Nation Outside. We work all across the state of Michigan. I specifically work in Oakland County, and we're very big in like community um, engagement, I am a part of the Trauma Informed Peer Led Reentry program that Nation Outside offers. We do policy and legislation around reentry and different things that impact people who have come in contact with the criminal justice system. Um, my LinkedIn is Rachel Worthy. My Instagram, Rachel underscore RIP mom, or should I spell it out? RACHEL underscore RIPMOM. Um, just in case I don't. So yeah, just if anybody wants to connect, that's where you can reach me.
It's truly been a pleasure. Just want to shout out my boy Jonathan, had him on, connecting me with you. Wonderful guy, wonderful guy. But I just truly appreciate you taking the time and allowing me um, to be able to hear your story and allowing the audience to be able to hear your story. I believe our stories are our own, and it has power, it has weight, and it has purpose. Um, so I just want to thank you for allowing my platform to hold it and cherish it. Um, and hopefully help allow it to help some other people out there. Hopefully. So
Yeah. And
that
thank you for having this platform. I always have this idea, they say like there's platforms to give a voice to the voiceless. I believe that nobody is voiceless. You just need that space to use your voice and believe that you belong in these spaces. So thank you for allowing me to share my story on this platform. And yeah, shout out to Jonathan. And just, yeah, thank you. Keep doing the work you're doing. I think it's really impactful and powerful. And yeah.
appreciate that. Well, guys, as I get ready to end out the episode, I know we've talked about some deep things. We went deep, and some of these things could have, opened some doors within your own story, your own experience. I just want us to take a moment wherever you are in your car, in your cubicle, in the kitchen, grabbing the Nutri-Grain bar, wherever. Let's take a moment to practice some mindfulness, get ourselves back grounded, take a deep breath, and just allow ourselves to, release,
Yes.
um, because I understand the conversations we have here can be a little bit heavy, but by no means do I want that heaviness, to have a darkening cloud. I want it to be, the rainbow after the rain, and to help us and guide us to the place of healing and transformation. With that being said, if these have opened some doors and you just trying to figure out, okay, I don't know how to deal with these feelings. Where do I go? What resource? Feel free to reach out to me. Miss Worthy, Miss Worthy,
Yes,
you said she got some resources.
I do. I do.
So like reach out to Miss Worthy. You know, and I'll be happy. I'm pretty sure she'll be happy to be able to connect you with whatever you need, and whatever that looks like for you.
Yes.
Um, Man, it's been a minute. It's been a minute. It feels good to be back, y'all. It feels good to be back. I have to admit, your story touched me a lot. I learned a lot as I was listening, and it just for me, one of the greatest things about being able to host these conversations is being able to be in reverence in the space of someone, pouring their heart out, essentially, pouring, the deepest parts of them and whatever they have experienced and what helped them get over that hill, that hump, or that place of survival. And it's amazing. It's truly amazing, and I'm grateful for the privilege of being in this space. Definitely, I'm definitely am a person to give homage because it wasn't me that brought me here. Definitely was God that gave me this platform, this space, and I'm grateful. Most people, some people out there know I say this a lot. This is my ministry. This is some change work, the advocacy, this platform. This is my ministry. Some people got pulpits, some people, are here or there, and this is me. This is what I do, and this is the space that I choose to use, the spiritual gifts that I have gained to help others. With that being said, I'm in a process of writing a book. I'm trying to finish out season 3. I'm going to be writing a devotional to help guide those who may not understand the word of God, or it may be their first time connecting with whatever. Uh, but also, to help foster youth, build relation as well. Now I know everybody out there may not be a believer or what have you, and I respect um, your decision and the space that you are in, but this is what God has led me to be, and I'm going to do my best each and every day that I'm alive and God allows me to breathe this great breath to pay homage and respect and give back. So, with that being said, I just want to thank you guys for listening. This has been Resilient Voices Beyond. I hope you guys have a good morning, good night, good whenever you're listening to this. Talk to you guys soon.